something completely different. I'll just begin by saying some of you, a few of you are aware that my bonus mother, Gail Painter, made her transition about a week ago. And so I actually flew to Florida Thursday afternoon and then did the service yesterday and flew back last night. So today, the wonderful Steve Morris and I are going to engage in a conversation about the third chapter from the 7 Spiritual Laws of Success, a practical guide to the fulfillment of your dreams. Now, in week 1, I gave away 7 copies of these, and I encourage you each week to continue to go out and pick this up. I promise you, you'll be happy that you did. Now, in the first week, we looked at the law of pure potentiality, and I just reminded you that you have divine design in you. You've got the God design, God by whatever name you call God. Just like the embryo becomes the baby, like the acorn becomes the oak tree, like the butterfly has to spend some time in the coop, but becomes the beautiful butterfly. That is you. But you really do need to cooperate. You need to cooperate, right? And that's where your free will comes in. And then last week we talked about the law of giving and receiving, that it is a continuous flow, that the energy of giving and receiving is actually just it's the same thing, just from different ends of the continuum, right? And we want to always be in that process of circulation, always giving and receiving. Amen? Amen. But we need to be open to both. So today we're going to talk about the law of karma, or the law of cause and effect. And I just know that this is going to be a favorite, because it's very much in alignment with Unity's third principle, which is that we create our life by our thoughts, by our thinking. And of course, in Unity, we love a pithy, good phrase. Do you know what it is? Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. That's right. So we're in that lane today. We are absolutely in that lane today. So Steve has prepared some questions, and we're just going to jump in and have a good old-fashioned dialogue today. Sound good?
Yes.
Amen.
Yeah, so if you have not got a copy, if you didn't get one of the 7, there's this is all the same stuff, but just much smaller print, apparently. But they have a lot of these at the Barnes & Noble, they're at the Parks Mall. So I would say grab one, because it is such an easy read. And I really liked going back and reading the chapters that we had already discussed. And I was like, oh, now that'll be fun to read beforehand as well, because I think you'll answer a lot of stuff. So in chapter 3, one of the biggest things that it kept talking about was what you reap is what you sow.
Has anybody heard that before?
What you
right?
reap
is what you sow. Now, Jerry is a farmer. Jerry can probably speak to that, right? Yeah, what you reap is what you sow.
Plant a radish, get a radish.
There you go.
And it also says, if we want to create happiness in our lives, we must learn to sow seeds of happiness. So that's my first question, is what are some ways that we can begin to sow seeds of happiness in our life? How do we do that?
How do we do that?
Because that sounds great. I'm like, yeah, okay.
It does sound great.
Let's just choose to be happy, but how do we sow those seeds?
Well, and I would start by saying the good news is that that's up to us. We get to choose what kind of seeds we are sowing, right? So why not sow seeds of happiness, or at least set the intention for that? And I think that requires practice. When we are mindful about our intentions, when we are mindful about what we are putting into motion, that is what we reap back. That's what we're sowing, and that's what we reap back. And I think the rub is really just stopping ourselves sometime, right? Just to have the discipline You hear me say check yourself before you wreck yourself, right? To stop yourself. And is this what I want to put into motion? And if you want to create happiness, not just for yourself, but for others as well, for all others. So when you're making these decisions, and Deepak says that it's all about conscious decision making. Now if that in Unity, I don't know what is, right? But be conscious, be mindful about it, because that's what you're putting into motion.
It talks about the conscious choice. I mean, the two questions, yes, that I liked about conscious choice was, what are the consequences of this choice, and will the choices that I'm making bring happiness to me and to others?
Yes.
And I think that's what really struck me, is I think a lot, not that we're being selfish, but I think sometimes we just think, oh, I'm going to do that because that would make me happy, and we don't think about the repercussions of other people in our lives that it is also going to affect. So is that another one of those things that's just practice thinking about?
Everything. Practice, practice, practice. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, right? But I would like for you to read those two questions again, because this is your heart work. If you can just wrap your little heart and your brain around this, to pause and ask yourself these two questions, it will change your life for the better. What are the questions again?
What are the consequences of this choice? Will the choice I'm making bring happiness to me and those around me? Yeah, I was like, that's the...
Imagine
if you just
practice
every
that.
time, if you just like,
Yeah.
And really, and really kind of thought it through.
Right.
You know,
So, those are applicable. Like, you can do that before you leave the sanctuary today. Is that helpful? Is that helpful? Yeah. Okay.
When you leave that important part off of those around me, how do you think that turns around and comes back to affect us?
Well, it's where you
Do you think it only affects their happiness, or you think it also comes back and affects our happiness?
That's a really good question. I think that what we focus on is what expands in our lives. And so if we only focus on our own needs, then that's a pretty self-centered way to live. Because the truth is, anything we do has a ripple effect, and we all know that, right? So I wonder if it can really be true that it's only for us, because the vibrations, not to get too woo-woo, but thoughts have vibrations. They have a vibrational energy. So just because you don't say it doesn't mean that it's not felt in the world. Doesn't mean that there's not a ripple effect of that. So, it's something that we really, really want. Because, we've all lived through this side of the pandemic. If you're hearing this, right? That was a traumatic event for the world. And so let us, take the lessons from that, which is we are here to love each other. That's one very simple commandment from the way shower and the teacher, right? Does anybody not understand what it means to love one another? Right? As yourself, which means you need to also love yourself. Yeah. I don't know if that answered the question, but okay.
There's also some good stuff in there, I felt like, because we don't always stop and think everything through, right? We don't always make everything, even though it says we should, as a conscious choice. There's a lot of times when choices are unconscious, or we don't stop and think about them. We just, we just do something, right? So what kind of he says about this, about making spontaneous choices, is that we should pay attention to the comfort or the discomfort in our bodies. So it's like if you start to do something, or you spontaneously do something, or you make a choice without asking yourself those questions, right, that your body is going to react in some way. Either you feel at ease, or maybe you don't feel at ease, and sometimes he says that sometimes it's just really small. It's not always like, hey, don't do that, what, warning, it's just like, It
The
could be
whisper
something small.
before
The
it
whisper,
becomes
right?
the cosmic 2x4.
So what exactly do you think that means? And why do you think we don't listen to that voice most of the time, that we just go ahead and we use our hearts, our heads, our mind, instead of listening to what our body's telling us?
I have so much to say about this. It's yeah. It's a great place to be. The heart is not just about what's mushy and romantic, and that's all wonderful, right? But your heart will tell you everything you need to know. If you can just pause and put your hand over your heart, it will tell you everything that you need to know. And your body will tell you everything that you need to know. Like, do I need that gallon of Bluebell ice cream? No, probably not, right? Or, yeah, today it's okay, right? How am I going to make my investment? I've never been in a step group. I've never been in AA, but one of the things that I've learned from my friends who are going through recovery, and others could speak to this much better than I can, but there's the think the drink through practice. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Like, when you're in recovery and you're really trying to make some great transformation in your life, some great change in your life, and then you're tempted and you're like, well, is this, I'm sure I'll have a, whatever. And so what will happen in the beginning? In the beginning will be that numbness, that, not being mindful, oh, one won't hurt, right? And then in the middle, you're already having another and another and another. And then the end of that think the drink through is, and now I feel guilt, shame, I feel horrible that I blah, 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 blah. So I think that there's incredible wisdom from our brothers and sisters in that kind of step group. And I think one of the reasons that we don't is that a lot of us numb ourselves. And there are many, many ways in which you can do that, drugs, alcohol, shopping, gambling, food, yeah, it's all there. And that's one of the reasons that we, that we don't tune in, we don't pay attention is, did you say phone? Yeah, our those wonderful devices that now connect us around the world. Yeah, there's so many. We just numb ourselves out. And that is why spiritual community is vital, because we get to be here and remind each other of who we really are and what we're here to practice. Yeah.
I would say the last major component that I have a question about is, so there are times when we have made choices, right, in the past that maybe we're not happy with now, or that have not brought us happiness or brought us all the things that we thought they were going to, right? And Chopra tells us that when you have made choices that you regret or you feel like there have been unwanted consequences, if you want to transform to a more desirable experience, look at the seeds of opportunity within every adversity. So that you ask yourself, how can I learn from this? How can I make this experience useful to others? So I think in those times maybe where we didn't make a conscious choice, and now or we didn't listen to our warnings, in our body, do you think that works, to go back and correct them or fix them or live with them in a different way?
I think that, as true students being in unity, we're like guilt and shame really are not spiritual principles. So the first thing we need to do is just love ourselves and be easy and be kind to ourselves so that we can then be kind to others. To be easy with yourself, to be gentle with yourself. And when you realize, okay, I really messed up, and then apologize or a take two, right? But do what you're divinely guided to do, but really spend as little time as possible beating yourself up, because that's not going to help. It's not going to help you, and it's not going to help anyone else. One of the other things that he talks about in this chapter, which it is not my area of expertise, is karma and karmic retribution. I read this great meme that said, Dear Karma, I have a list of people I think you missed. And so we also don't want to go down that rabbit hole, right? Like where then you're wishing, or like you see some like, oh, they're such a bad person. Like, why are these good things happening? That's not your spiritual practice, right? We let God take care of that. Yeah. So I just think in any practice, when you realize, what was it Maya Angelou used to say? When you know better, do better, right? Yeah. She also said, trust people when they show you who they are the first time, right? That'll help. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that somebody from church posted on their Facebook page, and it might have actually been on the Unity page, the phrase that said, the words you speak are the house you live in.
Yeah, Hafiz, yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, I love that. So I actually used it on my Theater Thursday.
Yeah.
And then one of the ladies that is about to do a big conference for the school district saw it on my Theater Thursday. She's like, can you send that to me? Because I'm going to use that in the classroom.
That's why you're a great Unity disciple,
right,
Steve Morris. Yeah.
So, but I kept thinking about that all through this, the words that we speak, the things that we do are creating our future, as we're doing it.
If you take nothing else away today, take that. Every choice, and you always have a choice. You may think that you don't have a choice, but you do. I promise you, when you look at it deeper, you always have a choice. And every single choice, that conscious choice making, is creating your life. It's creating your life. I want to share a personal example with you. Today is actually my 8-year anniversary of being ordained a Unity minister. And I know some of y'all were watching online that night. Yes. Just ever so briefly, I mentioned earlier that my bonus mother, Gail Painter, just made her transition. Well, let me just tell you, we were living in Florida, hadn't been living there that long. I made a decision, I made a choice to go to a women's luncheon. I met this spunky little redhead. Gail was Jewish, but she was also Unity. And she invited me to some church called Unity. I was like, what? What is Unity? I thought she said Unitarian, not that I knew what that was either, right? But David and I, we attended the following Sunday, and you see how this turned out. Because I made a decision to go to a women's luncheon, I met Gail. Gail invited me to Unity. I fell in love, like I was one of those individuals. I walked through the door and I was like, I feel like I'm home. I didn't even know that this teaching existed. And then I was working in New York for a bit and went to Unity New York there, and that just lit my whole heart on fire. Heard the call, answered the call at age 50. God does have a sense of humor, right? Made the decision to continue to follow that, to go to seminary. We sold our house and moved to Lee Summit, right? And as that was coming to a close, did tryouts. Texas was never on my radar, ever. But before I left DFW, I said, David, I don't know how to tell you this, sweetheart, but we're moving to Texas, right? Some of them, many of you have heard me say this, some of the most extraordinary people on the planet are in this congregation.
Amen. Yes.
So, be a good Unity disciple. Invite some people to church. You see how it turned out for me, right? And David, yeah. But that's all. No, they don't. They don't. But it's okay if they do too.
Okay if they do.
Yeah, it's okay if they do too. Yeah.
There'll be other things that
Yes,
work less
yeah.
than
But that is really, you could just follow that timeline. It is absolute cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect. So another one I just
think it's interesting because that was certainly not your intention. That was certainly not your intention when we went to that lunch.
No,
Right?
No.
So,
I just thought I was being bold by making the decision to go.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was your intention, to be bold and to maybe
Yes, just to be
have something
present.
different.
Just to be present.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
then you got something big different.
Oh my God, changed my life for the better, right? Another cause and effect, which is, somewhat current, and Steve and I were talking about this earlier. I'm sure many of you are aware that Tina Turner, the goddess of all things rock and roll, made her transition recently, and I don't know how familiar you are with her life, but she's born in this small town in Tennessee. In the 50s and 60s, clearly, she was working with Ike Turner. They created some amazing music that's legendary to this day. But it was a abusive, terrible relationship. And that was in an era, although many, many women today are still challenged by, domestic abuse, physical abuse. I know Glenda has recently discovered in our own backyard here in Arlington, Hagar's Heart, right, that helps provide shelter. But it was the 70s before she finally got the courage to walk out of that relationship. And they were on tour at that time. I don't know how many of you saw the movie, What's Love Got to Do It. She was in Dallas. She was in a hotel in Dallas when she finally got the courage to say, no more of this, not knowing how she was going to make her way. And it was really, challenging for a long time. I don't know how many albums she did, but it wasn't getting any traction. But then things changed. She discovered Buddhism, and she started practicing and chanting, and she herself would say that transformed her life. So that seems kind of perfect that we're also talking about karma today. Then she just kept at it, and I think it was Disco Inferno. I don't remember what it was, but things eventually turned around. And look at her life. My goodness, that's another cause and effect. Did some good things come from being with Ike? Yes, but physical abuse is always a deal breaker, right? But it was, in an era when, women and men, men are also, experience that. So today, Sharan is going to bless us with River Deep Mountain High in just a few minutes, and it will be amazing. So you have a moment to prepare yourself, yeah? But that's another cause and effect. Please take that with you in your heart and in your minds. Be conscious of the choices that you're making.
Is that it? That's our heart work this week, is to be
Yes.
conscious and to ask ourselves
Those two questions.
the two
Will you read
questions.
them
Yes,
again?
I
Read 'em again?
will.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh. Yes, what are the consequences of this choice?
What are the consequences?
And will the choice I'm making bring happiness to me and those around me?
Everybody got that? You ready to do that heart work? Awesome.
Before you do anything.
Yeah. Okay.
All right,
God
thank
bless you. Thank you, Steve. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. A little different today. Thank you.